Thank you. Hello, everyone. Right, I need to check that this, there we go. Look at that. So, for those of you who have not even the remotest idea of who I am, let me give you a speed intro. I write books. I occasionally do TV shows. I work with companies to help them with ideas that will absolutely blow your mind. If you want to know any more than that, you can Google me. But please, make sure that you spell my surname correctly, because if you spell it wrong, you can end up with the Hebrew word for circumcision. And that means that if you're in the office and you're Googling, you can end up with images that you don't want to actually have anyone seeing. Okay? Okay. So, I've got a bit of a question for you. How many of you here would describe yourselves as creative? Okay. I've got a question for you. How many of you here would not describe yourselves as creative? Okay, I'm hoping to prove you all wrong. And that's just confused you, hasn't it? Is this creative? Yeah? Yes. Well, according to Google Images, yes, it's creative. This is one of the first images you get for creative dancing. Is this creative? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, as Google Images says, creative painting for this one. So I started to do some more research. Put in creative salad. I got that. That's all right. I put in creative flower arranging. I got that. Do you all agree that's creative? Yeah, okay. I put in creative funeral. It exists. I thought, I need to be more challenging here. I put in creative toothbrush. Yep, creative toothbrush exists. It seems to be some form of technology. They think this is creative, a creative toothbrush, that's good. So I got to challenge Google a little bit more. So I put in creative cappuccino. Yep, you can get creative cappuccinos. Okay, no, I don't know why you're clapping. I didn't do it myself. Jeez, people. So I then I got to challenge Google a bit more. Creative beef sandwich. Yep, creative beef sandwiches exist, and isn't that absolutely delicious? Right, so I need to challenge it a bit more. Creative toilet brush. Yep, creative toilet brush is there. So it's like, okay, here's me at the end of my tether, really trying to break Google with this. So I just hit the keys randomly. Creative, bump, like that. Yep, creative exists. I've got no idea what this is, but this is what came up in the image search. So this kind of should be leaving you with a really important question in your head. What actually is creativity? I wanted to know this, so I decided, if it's like, what is creativity? I want to know what is creativity, so I set up a site that was called What is Creativity? Not very imaginative, I'm sorry. Certainly, I didn't put any creativity into the title. And for those of you at the back who are straining to see, Pornhub is not one of those. I mean, for goodness sake, people, I know how to use incognito mode. Jeez. So I got hundreds of answers for this. And, you know, there was a unifying thing about the answers. They were all complete nonsense. There was nothing that you could look at from those answers and go, yeah, we've nailed it. Everyone knows what creativity is. No, it was absolute drivel. There was very few things there that made any sense whatsoever. Because, you know, if we can use the word creativity to describe the graceful movements of a ballet dancer, as well as a bunch of beige accountants in a beige room wearing beige suits, sticking yellow post-it notes to a wall. There is no overlap between these. There are no overlaps in the skills. So how can the word creativity mean anything if it can be used for such different things? So one of the first things we have to do is we have to separate creativity into doing and thinking. So you've got creative doing. This is for the people who are dysfunctional enough to put in the 10,000 hours of focused practice to become really, really excellent at something, whether that is art, whether it's music, whether it's dancing, whether it's masturbation. I don't know. I don't know about you guys. I just thought I'd put it out there. So creative doing is that's one thing. And to be honest, that's quite specialist because there's a certain amount of dysfunction of a human being that's required to get to this stage. I used to be a musician. I kind of was that kind of dysfunctional person. Creative thinking, on the other hand, is something we can all do. We can all do it. It is our birthright. It's what makes us human. The ability to come up with ideas is something we all have. And for those of you who were in the session on Friday, who was in the session on Friday? Oh, there's a few hands there. That's good. We could see that we actually have this built into our brains. This is actually in our brains. We have this in here already. We can connect different things. To take this, connect it with this, and we get something new. We get something fresh. It's actually there in our brains. So I'm really interested in creative thinking. So let me tell you what I believe it is that makes people good at coming up with ideas. This here is a flattened circle which represents a norm. And a norm is when any group of people get together, they all end up with kind of the same beliefs, the same approaches, the same knowledge, the same skills. They all conform to each other. And there is a good reason for that. There's an evolutionary psychological reason for that. Because when humans were living on the plains, it was better to be part of a big group than it was to be a loner. Because if you were part of a big group, it meant that you could probably survive to pass on your DNA. But if you are a loner, living outside because you don't quite fit into the group, then there's a good chance you're only going to get to pass on your protein to a wild animal. And that means that your traits aren't then passed on through humanity. So we have this thing where we conform. We become like everyone else in an organization. Very often we can call it culture. Everyone is similar. Everyone's very similar. The people who are great at coming up with ideas, oh, yep, there you go, that's the norm. The people who are great at coming up with ideas diverge from the norm. They don't quite comfortably fit in to the norm. And that means that if you can imagine that all the ideas that are inside this circle here, anyone can have them. Because everyone's kind of got the same knowledge, everyone's got the same understandings, everyone's got the same way of doing things. Anything that comes from inside this circle is pretty valueless because it's obvious and anyone can come up with it. So you need to be able to diverge, to be able to access the ideas that lie outside the norm. So being different, diverging, is really, really valuable. The other thing that makes people good at coming up with ideas is drive. People actually want to do stuff. They've got the drive to try and fill their heads with good information. They've got the drive to learn new skills and try out new skills and to make things and do things regardless of whether they've got a purpose. So when I'm speaking to businesses, I'm kind of talking to them about what I call here is the donut of opportunity. Or if you are more of a savory person, it can be the bagel of opportunity. And it's to aim for the stuff that lies outside the norm, because anything from in here is pretty valueless because anyone could come up with it. So being different is the important thing. So I very quickly want to skim over what it is that makes people diverge, that makes them different. So there's two primary kinds. You've got involuntary and you've got voluntary. So involuntary is the stuff we have no control over that makes us different to other people in a group. So let's have a look at some of that. There's 4 of these. The first is what we call diversity. It's in your DNA. It's what makes you different. It makes the color of your skin, or the level of your ability, or your balance of ovaries to testicles. It's diversity. It's being different from the majority of people in a group. So that's your nature. The next one here is what we call your nurture. is how you're brought up. Are you brought up in a place that's got lots of hope? Are you brought up in a family that loves you? Are you given support? Are there role models within your group that makes you want to try harder? The next thing, so this forms who you are. You've got nature and nurture forms who you are. And then trauma is things that happen in your life that force you to change who you are because you have to cope with something. And you have to redefine who you are as a human. And then you've got illness. And illness is something that can come in and come out. It can be more temporary. So this is involuntary divergence that can make people different. And all of these things, we tend to look at these things and see them as negatives. I'm saying no, these are superpowers. These are huge positives. If you use them in the right way, they can be massive positives. Right, so now we've got voluntary. This is the stuff that you can do yourself to diverge. Contrarianism. This is about being a pain in the ass. How many pains in the ass have we got in here? Right, we need more pain in the asses, definitely. But you have to be a constructive contrarianism. And that means that instead of just going, that is shit, which is what most contrarians will do, that is bollocks. It's not doing that. It's going, that's not great. This is what we could do instead. So to be a constructive contrarian, you should be saying, here is a better alternative. So don't just stop at pointing at something and saying it's crap. You have to go the next stage and come up with, here's a better thing for us to do. Right, dreaminess. Looking around the audience just now, I'm reckoning that about 17% of you are dreamers. I think that right now, instead of listening to me, you're actually dancing with a unicorn in Narnia. Yeah, I can see that. So these are great. The reason that people will dream when they're at work and they'll be dreamers and they'll drift off is because dancing with a unicorn in Narnia is far more interesting than the fucking spreadsheet that they're supposed to be doing. So if you give people really low-grade clerical work that's of no interest, no wonder they're going to drift off and dream. But these dreamers, if you harness them, if you encourage them to dream with something that is great, it's a great piece of work, they can use their imaginations really powerfully. Drink and drugs. I joined the advertising industry just at the tail end of that being part of it. And I ended up conducting an experiment a few years ago to see if alcohol made you more creative. It does. Okay, and then the last one is play. Play. But people think that work is the opposite of play. Play is the opposite of work. Yeah, it's not. It's not. In fact, what confused me as a child, that all I always thought that was Mars bars. Used to have this slogan, a Mars a day helps you work, rest, and play. Yeah, it doesn't really, but I mean, it just makes you fat. But it was kind of saying that work, rest, and play were different things. Work and play are different things. So, you know, I would tell people, hey, I'm going to Montenegro next week. And they go, is that business or pleasure? Is that work or play? And I said, why does it have to be one or the other? It doesn't have to be. Because what play is, if you think of, if you are getting some friends together to play a game of Monopoly, there's a couple of things to understand. The first is that you're a very boring person. The second thing is that what you're doing is you are creating an environment where for a short period of time, you and your friends are agreeing that this is how we operate, this is our roles, these are the rules that we're following, this is how we know when we are finished. This is the aim that we are trying to do, is to get to the end of this game. Now, that is just creating a different environment for people to think. You are putting people in a different thinking state for a short period of time. And then after that, they can return to being the unbelievably boring pinstripe people they are in an office. So you can take the most mundane, straight-laced people, and you can put them in a play environment and get ideas out of them. And I do this quite regularly, get ideas out of them that they can't believe they came up with. And then straight afterwards, they go back and they start color-coding their spreadsheets. Play is really important. So, Steve Jobs said it better than me for all this.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So from that clap, I take it that you are all wanting to be a bunch of crazy ones. Give me a hell yeah if you want to be a crazy one. Hell yeah. Good, that's what we need. Right, I want to tell you a story you've heard before. Who is this guy? Edison, Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, the man who invented the light bulb. Oh. Oh. I did say the light bulb, I didn't say electricity. I'm a Tesla fan. Anyway, thank you, you're right. This guy did not invent the light bulb. It's the story that we were all told. He invented the light bulb. He tried 1,000 different ways and he got it wrong 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb, and if it wasn't for him, we'd be in a room full of candles. Absolute shit. The true story is Thomas Edison was really late to the market. The light bulb had already been invented. The only thing that they hadn't sorted out was what material the filament would be made from. And there were people already researching this all over the world to find out what it is that will mean that a light bulb can last for weeks instead of hours. So his lawyer told him about this and that there was a race on to do this. So Edison got his team of people, it wasn't him, he got a team of people at Menlo Park, which was his laboratories, to work on this tirelessly, to try and find that material. And he was lucky because his team came across carbonized thread, which meant that they were able to get a light bulb that would last for weeks without burning out. He did not invent the light bulb, and he personally didn't really work on this project actively. So it's part of this myth that we have, that people like him, they've got special brains. Oh, and someplace in this special brain, there's a region that is creativity. And that creativity is one skill, and it's a gift, it's a talent, it's something that people have. It's not. Creativity is a whole bunch of skills. It is not one skill. It is not one skill. Don't fall for that. Don't fall for the myth that something is creative and another thing is not. One person is creative and another person is not. That is absolute nonsense. And creativity is not one skill. There's a whole bunch of stuff like this. Focusing, imagining, compiling, evaluating, adopting, generating, gathering. And some of them, I think, are more important than others. So I want to take you through quickly the hierarchy of skills, the way I see it. Now, in the advertising industry, as a creative director, the big belief was that the most important skill to have, the most valuable skill to have, is the ability to have ideas. To be able to put your Converse up on a desk, stare out a window, and boom, have an idea. In my system, ideas are the least valuable thing. The ability to have ideas is the least valuable skill in this process. Because everyone can have ideas. Fewer people, however, can recognize good ideas. Fewer people can develop ideas to make them really good. Fewer people still can articulate these ideas, put them into words to tell people about them. Even fewer people can generate support to get the team around them to help make it happen. And this one at the bottom, persevere until it's done. Wow, that's the rarest skill of all. I used to hire for it because it's something that I think you can't really teach. is to do with whether somebody actually has the drive and the energy to want to do stuff, and it's to do with the environment that they're in. So here's the skills, based on those. Oh, go back one. Come on. There we go. Imagination. Does anyone here not have imagination? Anyone? No, oh, there's someone at the back there. Hey, Vladimir. I want you to imagine me only wearing Speedos, painted bright green with glitter on my head. But you're with me. You're scared because you've imagined it. Brilliant. We've sorted you out. We've fixed you. You have imagination. And the rest of you, you can see me doing that later on tonight. It's the special show that you didn't know you were invited to. Right, the next thing is judgment. Judgment's one of these things people think, whoa, judgment is something you've either got or you don't. You've either got good taste or you don't have good taste. Right, I want to prove you wrong. Judgment is not that. Judgment is something you learn. Judgment comes from experience. If you were to take me into the middle of a field, someplace in Montenegro, and show me a tractor, and say, Dave, is that a good tractor? My answer would be, I don't fucking know. Okay, right, great, we're in a good place, all right? That's a great start. I do not have a clue. However, if I followed somebody who was an expert on tractors for a couple of months, watched everything they were doing, asked them questions about the tractors, if I read books about those tractors, if I do some research, if I go around and look at tractors to see if I can identify them, put in a bit of practice, give me 3 months, I'll be able to tell you if that tractor's a good one or not. I might even be able to value it for you. I might be able to tell you how to change the spark plugs. Judgment comes from education and experience. And that means you can get really good at judgment very quickly. If you want to be, and this is a really valuable thing, being a good judge is really, really valuable in any job. And all you have to do is consume as much stuff as you can to do with your job and to continually ask questions, why is this good? Does that make sense? If you start doing that and you get into the habit of doing that, you're going to be brilliant at judgment, and that will make you far more valuable in your job. I think that this is one of the most important skills and one of the poorest skills there is in business, is judgment, because people are absolutely terrified to make a decision and to have an opinion. But that is what makes you valuable in the workplace. Right, next thing is adaptability. This is more of an attitude. And the problem is in business, you know, when somebody comes up with an idea, they say, this is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for this right here. And the bosses go, fantastic, I love the idea. And they fall in love with the idea itself. They say, right, go ahead and do it. And so people go back and they start doing it. And as they're learning, they get, oh, a realization. You know, that's all right, but we've got this insight about people. That means that this is a better direction for us to go in. And then they learn something else as they're doing it. Oh man, there's this new piece of technology. And they end up zigzagging and pivoting. And the problem is, if leadership have agreed to this idea, they say, deliver us that idea. And they're not open for the adaptability, for this opportunity to be able to be open to the better ideas that you learn as you do. Because learning from books is not as good as learning by doing. If you want to learn the piano, you don't read a book on it and then sit down and be able to play Rachmaninoff. You practice like crazy and get better and better, and you learn by doing. Communication, that's something that you can learn. A lot of it is about putting structure in. Persuasion, that's a good sales skill. That's something that you can learn to get people on board. We should all be learning these psychological, social skills, sales skills. Right, tenacity, that's the difficult one. As I said, you have to hire for that. So I used to hire people who were finishers, people who were completers, people who showed me, when they came to me with a portfolio of ads, I would look through it, and then I'd go, right, what else do you do? And I was interested to see what they did in their spare time. And I would end up hiring people who did stuff. People who were graffiti artists, people who were t-shirt designers, people who were cake decorators, people who did stuff. They knew how to complete. And then the second thing is about your environment. Because if you have an environment where people are battered down and given criticism all the time, you will kill people's tenacity, whatever you do. The other thing is, if you've got a process that's got too much decision making and too many meetings through the process, you will also kill it because basically the energy just drops very quickly, and then people, for the last half of it, are just keeping going to the end, going, oh, fuck, I wish I'd never done this in the first place. So this is to do with hire the right people and get the right environment. And the other thing is that creativity is not a solo sport, certainly not anymore. You have to work with a great team. And if you don't have all those skills, you need to make sure that the team you're working with collectively have all of those skills. Does that make sense? Good. Right, there's one more thing. For those of you who were in the session on Friday, we came up with lots of things that would prompt our thinking, lots of different things that might help us come at problems from a different direction, inspire us to do things that we wouldn't normally do. And I promised you that I would take the ideas you came up with, the observations you came up with during the day, and add them to the wonderful this site inspires.me. .me! Thank you. And I have. So there are about 150 different prompts that you can have on here. So if you're ever trying to come up with ideas and you want something to just jar your thinking, to get you thinking in a different direction, thinking of new possibilities, then go along to this site inspires.me and it will give you a random piece of stimulus that will cause you to think in a different direction. And I now have to say, thank you very much, I love you.